Well, hello, everybody. Good evening and a very happy Saturday. Is it Saturday now? I'm on vacation this week, and with the holiday and everything, my week is just all off on its own. I think it's Saturday. Welcome on in, everybody. Glad to have you guys here with me tonight for another story time evening on this fantastic Saturday evening. Or last week, well, depends. I guess. Tuesday, we started The Sentinel Project, Book 1 by Soren K. Blackwood. So, uh, it's interesting. It is definitely interesting. It's, it is a book about, it gets kind of into the, um, idea of, you know, alien implanted, genealogy or alien implanted parts of ourselves or whatever you want to call it. And so our protagonist in here, Ben, uh, discovers something. He writes a paper about it and basically gets drummed out of the academic community. No, poor Ben. And so he is picked up by a private corporation to come on out and see an artifact. He came out to see what looks like basically a spaceship and gets dragged back into somebody else's memories. Lyra. And then that is where we basically will be kicking it off from today. So, of course, if you have not listened to it yet, youtube.com/@SirArminius. Make sure you stop out there, give a listen, give a like, give a follow, give a subscribe. Remember to subscribe to youtube.com/@SirArminius. Um, Help me to continue to showcase these indie authors as we have the opportunity to do so, because it is important that we continue to give them a platform to market their materials because, well, it's hard to market your materials as an indie author. So this is just a little platform that I use to help to draw some awareness to these indie authors. So make sure you get out there and support the channel so I can continue to do so. As well, you can get out there and support the author. The book is available on Amazon. The link is in the description over on my YouTube channel, so you can always grab it from there. As always, I will be reading the chapters and I record them to put them up on the YouTube channel. So, if you were engaging with me during the chat, please engage with me during the chat. I like it. It makes me happy. I will be happy to engage back in between chapters because that way it's not on the recording. We will probably go for about an hour and a half or so tonight. I think the 2.5 hours that I've been doing on these has been a little long for a lot of people. You don't necessarily have the time to just sit down and do that for a long period of time with me. So I'm trying it with a little bit shorter hour and a half period on these. The recordings, of course, are always available on YouTube for you to go back and listen to at your leisure. So everybody grab yourself a cup of tea, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we dive into another evening of story time, where tonight we will continue on the Sentinel Project, starting from Chapter 7, The Map in the Memory. Ben snapped back to reality in the underground shaft, a raw gasp tearing from his throat. He was disoriented. his own identity a fragile shore against the crashing waves of Lyra's memories. The scent of wood smoke, the weight of a spear, the terrifying beauty of the ship in the sand. Kalen was there, leaning over him, her expression an unreadable mix of clinical concern and intense curiosity. Doctor? Ben, report. What did you experience? He looked past her at the technicians and the geologists. They wore the same clothes. They held the same tools. The scene was a photograph of the moment he'd left. This is strange, he murmured, his voice hoarse. How long? How long was I gone? Kalen's eyebrow arched slightly. A strange question, Doctor. We logged the connection time at precisely 11 minutes. 11 minutes. The word was meaningless. He had felt the sun rise and set on Lyra's world. He had felt her fear, her hope, her crushing final revelation. He murmured to himself, the words a jumble of 2 lifetimes. The village, the temple, Lyra's dwelling, the stone. He disregarded Kalen's patient stare, his attention riveted on a nearby technician's tablet. His hands trembled, but not from any weakness. It was the overwhelming rush of knowledge that seemed beyond belief. A map, he rasped urgently. I need a detailed topographical map of this entire region. Immediately. Without hesitating, he grabbed a simple stylus and began to sketch with feverish intensity. His strokes were not the meticulous lines of a cartographer, but the frantic marks of someone who had witnessed something extraordinary. The sun set behind this peak, he murmured, tracing a jagged mountain line from the perspective of someone standing on solid ground. The stream meandered this way. There was a grove of ancient gnarled trees here. He etched a line across the screen. The river. It separated their village from where we stand now, and the vast savanna lay here. He was painstakingly recreating Lyra's world, a world that had disappeared millennia ago, entirely from memory. At first, the geodynamics team was professionally skeptical. Their ground penetrating radar showed nothing but bedrock and sand in the area Ben indicated, 2 kilometers south of the main dig site. It's just empty desert, Doctor, a lead geologist reported to Kalen. However, upon witnessing the deep, unwavering conviction in Ben's eyes, Kalen made up her mind. She glanced at her chief of security and then at the geologist. Ignore the radar, she ordered, her voice slicing through the desert air. I want lights and a full excavation team at that spot. Dig exactly where he indicates. Right now. Galen moved in closer to Ben, speaking in a voice softer than the humming core at his back. Do you really think you're the first? There's more than your mind ever will. She held his stare like she could see through bone. Don't you wonder where your line begins? Chapter 8. Echoes and Eyes. The first 24 hours of the new dig were a study in organized chaos. Under the harsh glare of portable light stands that turned the desert night into a surreal twilight, the geodynamics crew worked with a quiet, intense focus. They were professionals, but Ben could see the skepticism in their eyes as they followed the strange, hand drawn map of a man they considered a corporate sponsored eccentric. The mood shifted just after dawn on the second day. Ma'am, you need to see this. A lead geologist called out to Kalen, his voice tight with confusion. He pointed to the screen of his ground penetrating radar unit. The GPR is going haywire. It's getting readings that don't make any sense. Ben and Kalen crowded around the monitor. The display showed a cross section of the bedrock nearly 50 feet below the surface. But instead of the expected strata of sandstone and limestone, the radar was painting a picture of impossible geometry. A series of perfectly smooth, sheer vertical planes, intersecting at clean right angles. That's not possible, the geologist muttered, running the diagnostic again. Erosion doesn't work like that. It looks less like geology and more like architecture, like someone the planet's crust with a razor. Ben felt a thrill shoot through him, a jolt of recognition from a place deeper than memory. He remembered Lyra's journey through the canyons, the strange smooth cuts in the rock face. The kind of tool they don't want us to find, she had said. This wasn't a natural formation. It was a scar left by their technology. Keep scanning, Kalen ordered, her face an unreadable mask. Log every anomaly. The glitches began an hour later. First, the encrypted satellite link Ben was using to communicate with Keats flickered and died. It came back online 30 seconds later, but the connection was sluggish, the data packets corrupted. Then, the site's primary communications array went down for 2 solid minutes, cutting them off from the outside world. Equipment failure, Kalen's head of security, a stern woman named Rostova, reported, her jaw tight. Both systems have redundant backups. Something is actively interfering with our signal. We're being probed. The paranoia was a low grade fever that spread through the camp. A supply drone flying in from the coast suddenly veered off course, its GPS signal scrambled, before crashing into the dunes 10 miles away. Rostova's team swept the perimeter, their faces grim. The vast empty desert no longer felt empty. It felt like it had eyes. That evening, Kalen found Ben in the command tent, staring intently at the GPR data, trying to build a 3D model of the impossible subterranean structures. They're testing us, she said, her voice low, seeing what we have, how we react. This is more important than corporate espionage, Kalen, Ben said, gesturing to the screen. Don't you see? This is evidence of their tools, the same tools that built the ship. They didn't just land here, they reshaped the very bedrock of the planet. The science won't matter if our data is stolen and we're buried out here in the sand, Kalen countered, her voice sharp. My priority is securing this operation. Her words were prophetic. Rostova entered the tent at that moment, her face pale. She held up a small sealed evidence bag. Inside was a tiny metallic disc, no bigger than a thumbnail. We found that it adhered to the underside of the main generator's housing, Rostova said, her voice barely a whisper. It's a military grade burst transmission listening device, non commercial. It's been broadcasting our conversations for the last 12 hours. A heavy silence fell over the command tent. The truth was undeniable. They weren't just being probed by a corporate rival. They were being targeted by a player with resources and technology that rivaled their own. Kalen walked to the tent's entrance and looked out at the darkening desert, the distant lights of the dig site feeling fragile and exposed. The hunt was no longer a secret. The ghosts of the past had a new audience, and in the silent, invisible war for the greatest prize in human history, they had just realized they were no longer the hunters. They were the prey. Yeah, I gotta love it. So these chapter pages are all bright white, which is why you see it come up on the screen as bright and white as it does. It watches out my camera for a second. Because if you guys didn't know, I use a teleprompter to do all of my readings. And yeah, so it washes me out pretty good to start it, which is just fantastic. But we persevere as we start Chapter 9: The Briefing, A New Alliance. The next morning, a sharp rap on the door pulled Ben from a restless sleep. He opened it to find Kalen standing with another woman. She was striking, with an athletic build and an aura of quiet, formidable intelligence that seemed to hum in the dry desert air. Dr. Carter, I'd like you to meet Dr. Inanna Ferris, Kalen said. Inanna is a historian and physicist whose work, in some ways, runs parallel to yours. Kalen shot Ben a playful, sarcastic look. Though I couldn't find any pyramids in her research. Ben, captivated, found himself at a loss for words. Inanna simply nodded, her gaze analytical and intense as she took in the small, cluttered room. Inanna? Ben, let's talk, Kalen said, her demeanor shifting immediately to business. She closed the door behind them. Dr. Ferris, welcome to the fire. I apologize for the abrupt nature of your arrival, but we are no longer operating under the assumption that this is a simple scientific endeavor. She looked from Inanna to Ben, her eyes hard. To bring you both up to speed, as of yesterday evening, we have confirmed we are under active surveillance by a hostile and highly sophisticated entity. Our communications have been jammed. Supply drone was electronically hijacked, and my security chief found a military grade listening device on our main generator. Inanna's eyes widened slightly, but her expression remained professionally calm. Military grade? Not corporate? Non commercial, Kalen confirmed, which means we are no longer in a race with a rival company. We are being targeted by a player with state level resources. She turned to Ben. And it gets stranger. The GPR team has found impossible geological formations directly beneath the dig site you mapped out. Sheer, vertical plains of rock that defy any natural explanation. Inanna absorbed this, her analytical mind clearly processing the impossible data points. A hidden military power and forgotten alien technology, she stated, her voice even. You certainly don't start small, do you, Kalen? The prize is worth the risk, Kalen replied. We have no time to waste. We have to assume that every move we make is being watched. Our priority is to find the key to this puzzle before our uninvited guests decide to stop watching and start acting. Ben felt a pang of nothing. The threat felt trivial, a distant noise compared to the universe altering secret buried in the sand. I'm sure you'll handle it, he said, his mind already back in Lyra's world. Just then his door was thrown open. A frantic dig supervisor stood there, his face covered in dust and sweat, panting. Doctor, we hit something. Foundation stones. Exactly where you said they'd be. Short chapters in this book. I'm okay with that sometimes. It gives me pause to clear my throat. Sorry, guys, also getting over a little bit of a cold, so sometimes that's just the way it is. Excuse me. Here we go with our next chapter. Chapter 10: The Discovery. The Unearthing. They rushed to the site. A small celebration had broken out amongst the crew. Ben, however, walked straight to a tent nearby where a tech team had moved his equipment. He stared at the map he had sketched from Lyra's memory. The foundation stone is here, which means Lyra's house must be. What are you looking for, Doctor? And Nana's voice startled him. She had followed him into the tent. How could he explain? I'm trying to figure out where she would have hidden the stone, he murmured, thinking aloud. After she came back from the mound, I lost connection then. I don't know what happened next. Did Maddox find out? Did she give it to Alara for safekeeping? Lyra? Maddox? Stone? Inanna asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. Ben ignored her, a new thought striking him with the force of a physical blow. He rushed outside, scrambled atop a mound of excavated rubble, and surveyed the dig site. There, he said, pointing. The mound is that way, which means the temple must be there. His eyes darted back and forth, building a virtual village on the empty sand. If Maddox reclaimed the stone, it would be in the temple relic chamber. He turned to Inanna, his eyes wide with purpose. I need you to take a team and start a new dig. Right there. Without hesitation, Inanna nodded and began issuing orders. Ben, meanwhile, jumped down into the first excavation pit, where the team was carefully brushing sand from the newly discovered foundation. He disregarded the careful protocols, digging with his bare hands. The stone, he muttered. The stone is all that matters. Marking! A worker shouted. Ben scrambled over. Etched into the stone lintel above what was once a doorway was a simple, stylized carving of a smooth, rounded stone, a symbol of the tears of the sky gods. I know this house, Ben whispered, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. He began pacing out distances, his steps precise. This is the widow's house, which means Lyra's dwelling is 20 paces north, and Alara's is 10 paces east of that. He pointed to two new spots in the empty desert. Stop digging here, he commanded the stunned crew. Start digging there, and there, ASAP. The Finding. Ben stood at the edge of the newly unearthed temple foundation, the morning sun already baking the desert floor. The dig site was a whirlwind of controlled chaos, but his focus was singular. The relics chamber is there, he said, pointing to a specific enclosure defined by the tops of ancient stone walls. Clear the sand. Start there. He left the team to their meticulous work and strode back to the main compound tent where Keats and his equipment were housed. The air inside was cool, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat. Keats, run the sequence again, Ben commanded as he sat down. I need to go back. See what happened after she touched the ship. The data packet from the initial connection is fundamentally corrupt, Ben, Keats replied, its synthesized voice calm as ever. Multicolored diagnostic streams flooded the monitor. The temporal sensory data is incomplete. I cannot replicate the connection. Something's missing, Ben muttered, echoing his AI. Find it. We need a key, a bridge between the data sets. And I think we're looking for it as we speak. My analysis suggests the initial event was an uncontrolled discharge of latent data from the artifact, Keats explained. The artifact's processing language is architecturally different from my own. To translate it would take weeks. To establish a stable connection, my theory suggests we would need a physical object that can act as a quantum resonator, a key to synchronize both timelines. The stone, Ben realized. Dr. Carter? Ben looked up to see Inanna standing in the tent's entrance, a tablet in her hand. Please, call me Ben, he said, shaking off his frustration. What is it, Inanna? She offered a small, encouraging smile. We're halfway down in the relic's chamber. We found pottery shards, some carved objects, but no sign of a stone yet. Keep digging, Ben said, a new resolve in his voice. Join me. Let's check on the dwellings. They walked to the other dig site, where the outlines of two primitive houses were now clearly visible. Here, Ben said, his voice dropping as he stepped into the space that was once Lyra's home. This is where they slept. And this was Rorik's room. To an adjacent ruin. Alara's house. The kitchen area was here. See the burn marks? She could have hidden it. As they were examining the site, the chief archaeologist, a grizzled man named Dr. Eris, approached them, his face grim. Ben, a word. What is it, Eris? The dispersal pattern of the debris, Eris said, pointing at the wider village site. It's not a natural collapse. It's not an earthquake. This was a concussive event, centered right here. Someone, or something, blew this village apart. Ben's mind raced. What happened after I left? Were they attacked? Before he could process the horrifying new mystery, a triumphant shout erupted from the temple dig site. Dr. Carter! We found it! They all ran, their feet kicking up dust as they converged on the temple. A worker was pointing into a newly cleared section of the relic's chamber. There, nestled amongst the other carved objects on what was once a stone shelf, was an unmistakably smooth, dark stone. Ben fell to his knees at the edge of the pit, taking a brush from the worker's hand. He began to clear away the remaining sand with a reverence that silenced the entire crew. He could have lifted the stone in one swift motion, but he couldn't. It was a delicate object, a precious link across thousands of years of frozen, dead silence. Finally, the stone was fully uncovered, resting in the harsh desert sun for the first time in millennia. It looked exactly as it had in Lyra's hand. Ben looked up at Caitlin, who had just arrived, her face a mask of awe. This is it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. This is the key. He reached down and carefully, gently lifted the stone. The moment his skin made contact, a final, missing fragment of the memory slammed into his consciousness. It wasn't a full sensory immersion like before, but a rapid, vivid flash of images and feelings. The end of Lyra's story. He saw Lyra, awakened by Rorik at the foot of the silent ship, her mind reeling. He saw their weary journey back to the village. He felt her frantic attempt to explain the impossible truth, only to be met with cold, fearful piety of her tribe. He watched, helpless, asthmatic, his face a grim mask of authority, seized the stone from her and returned it to its pedestal in the temple's relic chamber. He witnessed Lyra's tragic fate, stripped of her standing, her possessions, and her son's trust. She was declared a madwoman. He saw her wandering the village she had tried to save, an outcast whose mind was lost in the echo of the truth she had touched. The final image was of the village years later, burning, attacked by rebels from another tribe. They ransacked the dwellings for food and valuables, but in their ignorance left the holy stones untouched in the crumbling temple. The vision receded, leaving Ben on his knees, gasping, the stone cool and impossibly heavy in his palm. The chain of custody was complete. Now he understood not only how the stone got back to the temple, but why it had remained here, buried and waiting. I can't believe it, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I saw it. I saw it all. He held it up, the smooth, dark surface seeming to drink the light. It's time, he said to the assembled team, his voice ringing with a newfound authority. We have the whole story. We have what we need. Let's see what it does. The experiment. The dig at the wreck had proceeded at a frantic pace. The ship's overall shape was now visible, a vast alien curve nestled in the ancient rock. The team had also cleared an area around what looked like a seamless recessed door. A hush fell over the site as Ben, flanked by Kalen, Inanna, and Dr. Eris, approached the vessel. We've heard about the stone's discovery, said the site's chief engineer, his voice filled with a reverence that had replaced his earlier skepticism. Ben nodded, carefully pulling the smooth black stone from its padded case. It felt cool and alive in his hand. This is it, he said, his voice low. This is the key. He walked slowly toward the ship's hull. As he drew closer, a low, resonant thrum began to emanate from the vessel, a sound felt more in the bones than heard with the ears. He was still 10 meters away when the recessed door began to retract. With a soft hiss of escaping pressure, a vertical line of light appeared, widening as the door slid silently into the hull. A cloud of cool, sterile air, smelling of ozone and long dormant machinery, billowed out. The entire crew froze, eyes wide, half expecting a ramp to lower and aliens to emerge. Ben, trembling with a mixture of terror and exhilaration, took a step forward. Ben, wait! Kalen's sharp command cut through his reverie. Security team first. Make sure it's safe. Ben nodded, shaken out of his trance. Kalen motioned her team forward. As they passed him, their tactical gear a stark contrast to the smooth alien hull, Ben looked at the stone in his hand. It recognized me, he thought. It recognized the key. Nearby, Inanna murmured, almost to herself. Or it recognized the specific vibrational signature of the stone. A user ID. A voice crackled over the radio. Clear. No life signs. Stable atmosphere. But the power core is active, ma'am. Ben looked at Kalen. Her face was a mask of cold professionalism, but he saw the fire of discovery in her eyes. She gave a single sharp nod. Permission granted. He stepped cautiously into the ship, finding himself enveloped within a short, curving tunnel. The walls seemed to pulse softly, exuding a dim, indirect light that bathed the space in a serene glow. This gentle illumination guided him toward the end of the tunnel, where it opened up into a small, windowless cockpit. At the center of this confined space stood a single ergonomic cradle, a sleek chair molded to support a body in perfect repose, as if it were cradling the occupant in a loving embrace. The cockpit was devoid of the usual technological clutter. There were no screens, no buttons, no visible interface to interrupt the sleek design. Ben's gaze swept over the minimalist interior until his eyes settled on a single, exquisitely shaped indentation on the chair's armrest. It was a socket, crafted with precision, and an exact match for the stone he carried. "I need Keats," he demanded into his comms. A moment later, Inanna entered, carrying his hardened laptop. "Here," she said, her voice a whisper of awe. "Let's get you connected." As she hooked his laptop to the sensor array they'd brought inside, her voice came over his earpiece, now filled with a nervous energy. "All connections are up and running. You are clear to go, Captain." Ben settled into the chair. He took a deep breath, then slowly slotted the stone into the socket. It clicked into place with a sound of profound finality. Instantly, the ship came alive. The humming intensified, and a series of soft chimes echoed through the cockpit. The door behind him began to buzz, sliding shut with an alarming speed. Inanna gasped and lunged for the opening, but it was too late. The door sealed with a solid, definitive thud, plunging the cockpit into near darkness, save for the faint glow of the walls. Ben was trapped. Outside, the crew scrambled, shouting reports. Through his earpiece, Ben could hear Kalen's calm, authoritative voice cut through the panic. "Stand down. Give him time. He was gone for 11 minutes last time." But Ben barely heard her. His body went limp in the chair as the world dissolved around him. "Ah, yes. The world has dissolved around the man. Whatever shall they do? Oh no, oh no, oh no! Oh yeah." So, how are you all enjoying the read so far this evening? Are you liking the Sentinel Project? I hope so, as we will continue here momentarily. As we start into our next chapter, as such things are said, so shall it be written, so shall it be done. Let's start ourselves into Chapter 11, Session 2. System Status. Ben's consciousness returned not to the dusty, sun-baked dig site, but to an endless, silent void that seemed to stretch beyond the reaches of his mind. He found himself floating weightlessly in a vast, dark expanse, devoid of any visible boundaries. The darkness was profound and all-encompassing, like the deepest part of an ocean. Suddenly, thin streaks of light, resembling ethereal glowing threads, began to weave themselves around him, creating an intricate and delicate tapestry. This luminous network gradually formed into a transparent, holographic interface that hovered in the air. Before him, a keyboard materialized, shimmering into existence with an otherworldly glow. Its keys glowed softly, adorned with strange alien characters that pulsed with a mysterious, captivating energy. He felt the familiar presence of his AI companion. "Keats, what do you make of this?" Keats's connection was faint, distorted. "Hmm, hang on. Stabilizing. I'll get back to Earthly." Ben waited, adrift. He looked down and saw his own body, his own clothes, perfectly rendered in this space of nothingness. The ship had projected him as he was. "Ben," Keats's voice crackled, now clear and sharp. "I've been communicating with the ship. It identified you immediately from the marker in your genome. That marker, it's a passcode, an authorized user key. Ben, how is this possible? Who placed it there? Why me? Ben thought, the same question echoing in his own mind. What is so special about me? Ben, Keats continued, a new urgency in its tone. I am fully synced with the ship now, but my abilities are dwarfed by its programming. The entire operational language is alien. I've been trying to build a translator, but it will take time. As Keats spoke, the strange symbols on the virtual keyboard flickered and resolved, shifting into the familiar characters of the English language. A deep, resonant voice, ancient and powerful, filled the void around Ben. It was not a sound, it was a thought delivered directly into his consciousness. Greetings, descendant. There is no need for translation. You do not need to type. I can hear your thoughts. Ben was awestruck, his 10 million questions momentarily silenced by the sheer presence of this alien intelligence. The first words that finally tumbled out of his mind were not about the mission, but about himself. Why me? He thought. Why do I have this marker in my genes? Because you are of the bloodline of Anya. Sharma, Mission Specialist 7, the ship replied. Your genetic key grants you access to the archives. It is your inheritance. Perhaps it is best if I show you. The dark abyss around Ben dissolved. The void by a sleek, clean, oval-shaped room. The walls glowed with eternal light. Tools and gadgets he couldn't comprehend hummed softly in every corner. Scientists dressed in strange, beautiful, functional outfits moved with a quiet purpose. The air smelled real. The scene was real. This is where your marker was first encoded. The ship's voice narrated, now a calm guide in his ear. This is a memory from 52,000 of your years in the past. It took place on the vessel you call the ship, shortly before its arrival at your planet. This is crazy, Ben whispered, his jaw slack. You were light years ahead of us, even back then. Ben took a deep mental breath. The first session had felt like a chaotic dream. This felt direct, real. How? He projected. How am I seeing this? Is this just a video file from the ship's memory? You are not watching a file, the ship replied, the concepts flowing into Ben's mind with perfect clarity. You are rendering data. Your ancestral memory is the code. Your consciousness is the processor. The quantum field is your display. Ben struggled to grasp the scale of it. My display? Like a computer screen inside my head? Correct, the ship affirmed. Your biological form is a natural transceiver, capable of imprinting intention onto the field and receiving data from it. It is the observer that collapses the wave. This was the first and most important discovery of your ancestors. However, the signal is weak, distorted by echoic noise. This vessel and the larger apparatus you call the pyramid were designed to amplify that signal and filter the noise, allowing for a coherent, stable connection. You are not merely watching a memory, descendant. You are co creating the experience in real time. A wave of understanding washed over Ben, so profound it almost buckled his virtual knees. He wasn't just a visitor, he was a participant. The ship paused, allowing him to absorb the information. Now that you understand the nature of the interface, the ship continued, let us proceed to your deeper question. What for? Let me show you the purpose. The flicker wavered. Suddenly the light was engulfed by static, and quietly repeated the names to himself, hoping for a response. Ishtar? Esther? What? What do you mean? Ben struggled to grasp the ship's explanation, felt disoriented. The ship interrupted his confusion and resumed from where he had paused. The first question was why you? The ship stated. The answer lies with your ancestor, Anya. But your deeper question is, what for? Let us begin there. Let me show you the purpose. The Golden Age. The sterile white lab of Ben's vision dissolved like a smokescreen, replaced by the breathtaking reality of the Giza Plateau 52,000 years. He was looking through Anya's eyes, standing on a gentle rise, the air crisp and clean under a cool summer sun. Before them, the Great Pyramid stood in all its intended glory. It was not the sandy, weathered monument of his time, but a perfect, gleaming machine. Its casing stones were a polished, brilliant white that seemed to glow from within, and the entire structure hummed with a barely audible, resonant power. The surrounding grounds were not a desert, but a lush tropical parkland, steaming with life. Strange, flying, silent objects zipped across the sky, and below, scientists and technicians, in the now familiar silver tunics, moved with quiet purpose amongst tools and machines Ben couldn't begin to comprehend. At the foot of the pyramid, near its northern face, stood four different sized machines of polished black stone, waiting silently. This was not an inauguration. Ben sensed a palpable tension in the air. This was a critical operation. On a nearby hill, a man, the maestro, raised a hand, and a shimmering virtual interface appeared in the air before him. Through Anya's eyes, Ben saw her do the same, her own interface appearing as a translucent display screen showing the status of the four machines. The maestro looked toward her and the other members of her team, scattered around the plateau. Anya gave a sharp affirmative nod. The maestro's hand dropped, tapping a virtual key. A subtle hum began, and the four machines lifted from the ground on articulated legs, moving with a strange, silent, robotic grace. One by one, they entered the pyramid. Anya's display tracked them. The smallest descended into the subterranean chamber. The next ascended to the queen's chamber. The third found its place in the king's chamber. The largest and most complex of the four unfolded in the grand gallery, its appendages locking into the grooves of the walls, caressing the inner surfaces. Anya's display focused on the subterranean machine. It began to emit a deep, low pitched hum that Ben could feel in his own bones, even through the connection. Lines of light etched across the machine glowed white, then amber, then settled on a deep, powerful red. The ship's voice filled Ben's mind, a calm narrator explaining the impossible. Grounding the planetary root, the ship's voice narrated in his mind. Stabilizing the lithospheric mantle at the Muldara frequency. Next, the machine in the Queen's chamber began to hum at a higher pitch, its lights cycling to a vibrant, creative orange. Then the machine in the Grand Gallery activated, its hum a perfect, universal harmony that seemed to balance the other two, its light a clear, expressive blue. The stone slabs of the antechamber shifted, tuning the vibrations with micrometer precision. Finally, the machine in the king's chamber, stretched between the vent shafts, began its ascent, its hum peaking into a piercing crystalline note. Its light cycled through the entire spectrum: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, before settling on a brilliant, crown like violet. A plasma like energy field formed around it, pulsing, before erupting upwards through the very capstone of the pyramid. The capstone itself, Ben realized, was a machine. It focused the energy into a single, blindingly white star of light. Then, in a sudden, silent implosion, the star burst, sending a thin, shimmering sheet of pure energy blanketing the entire planet. The energy sheet now interacts with the global resonance nodes, the ship explained. Each site will shape the field according to its geometry and function. You call this sacred geometry. Anya's display screen shifted, showing a satellite view of Baalbek, a swirling spiral vortex, a maelstrom of light and energy, formed over the megalithic platform, funneling the energy from the sky into the ground with immense gravitational pressure. Site 2 is coherent, Anya stated, her voice calm, focused. The display jumped. Stonehenge. Here the vortex was different. The circular design of the stones caused the energy to twist inward, forming a magnificent double helix of light and sound that spiraled above the central trilithion, like the very code of life being written into the landscape. Site 3 is coherent. Machu Picchu. The energy did not spiral, it flowed. Like a river of light, it cascaded down the pristine terraces, following the natural curvature of the land in a dazzling serpentine vortex that carved its way up the mountainside. Site 4 is coherent. Finally, the display landed on Gobekli Tepe. Here, the energy did not move. It coalesced. It stabilized. Above the strange T shaped pillars, the cosmic energy took on a distinct, shimmering shape: the double crown, the Pshent, alive, in motion, and glowing with an unassailable authority. It was the anchor point. Planetary harmony achieved, the ship's voice declared. Ben stared, transfixed, a profound realization dawning in his mind. He whispered the thought, and Anya's lips moved with his. It's not random. Each site is a lens. They don't just receive the energy, they shape it. Correct, the ship confirmed. The planetary network is not a monologue from Giza. It is a symphony. Each site plays its unique instrument. Only Gobekli the crown, holds the energy and the symbol of perfect unity. So that's why, Ben thought, the puzzle pieces of his own world shaping into place. Why later civilizations carved that crown onto their temples. Because it was real, not symbolic, cosmic. Ben then had the thought that would change his understanding forever. The precision, the math, it's all here. Pi, the golden ratio, the speed of light. It's all encoded in the very dimensions of this structure. It's like they were building a time capsule. Were they leaving a message for the future? The vision of Giza dissolved instantly. Ben found himself standing not in the ancient past, but in a place intimately familiar to his 21st century mind: the control room of a nuclear power plant. Alarms blared silently, and engineers in hard hats rushed past him, their faces grim. On a massive screen, he saw complex coolant flow calculations alongside blueprints for a turbine generator. He recognized the math instantly: the golden ratio in the turbine spiral, the precise formulas for neutron moderation. A thought flashed in his mind, clear as a bell. They aren't carving poetry here. These numbers aren't a monument to mathematics. They are the bare minimum requirements. The plant must obey these principles, or it melts down. It's not a message, it's the instruction manual. No, it's the laws of physics the machine must follow to even exist. The nuclear plant vanished, and Ben was back in the silent void, the truth of the vision settling over him with profound weight. The ship's voice returned, not as a lecturer, but as a confirmer of a truth Ben had discovered himself. These numbers aren't poetry carved in stone. They're the bones holding up the temple, the machine's heartbeat. As your nuclear plant must obey the laws of physics to harness an atom, this apparatus must perfectly obey the laws of universal resonance to harmonize a planet. The constants are not a message left for you. The pyramid is a machine built from them. What? What did this accomplish? Ben asked, his mind struggling to comprehend. The planetary core was unstable. A global resonance network was required to create a coherent environment suitable for long term colonization. Giza was a primary conduit at the center of Earth's land mass. You activated the planet's chakra system, Ben exclaimed in a flash of insight. The ley lines, they're real. That is the closest analogy your current language can provide, the ship confirmed. There is still much to show you. Once planetary harmony was achieved, the apparatus could be used for its secondary function: individual consciousness alignment. Ben's heart was beating erratically. It was too much. Too soon. The flood of information, the sheer cosmic scale of the truth, was more than his 21st century brain could handle. The breathtaking vision dissolved into a firestorm of static. Outside the cockpit, the data stream from the ship didn't just stop, it vanished. The monitors displaying Ben's neural telemetry, which had been a chaotic storm of activity, went completely flat. Signal lost, Inanna stated, her voice tight with alarm. Kalen was already moving toward the ship's sealed door. Is he? She was cut off by a soft, pneumatic hiss that echoed in the tense silence of the shaft. With a sound like a held breath being released, the seamless cockpit door slid open. Kalen and Inanna rushed forward, their boots ringing on the metal floor. They found Ben slumped in the neuro interface chair, his face pale and slack, the stone on the armrest now dark and inert. Just as Kalen reached for his pulse, Ben's eyes flew open. He was back in the gasping for mind. The first words that tore from his throat were a strained cry to a stunned Kalen and Inanna. I know, he choked out, his eyes wild. I know who built the pyramids. And why? And then his world went black as he collapsed to the floor. Ah, guys, we know who built the pyramids. They were built by aliens to synchronize our planet. Oh, yes. Excuse me all. All right, are we ready for our next chapter? I believe that we are. So here we go. Chapter 12, Session number 3. The Song of Dissonance. Ben's eyes fluttered open to the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor and the sterile white ceiling of the on site infirmary. He was dazed, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting timelines. He rolled his head on the pillow. The crisp, clean sheets, the IV drip in his arm. This was his world, his time. He was back. He swung his legs out of bed, ripping the sensors from his chest. A medic rushed in, but Ben waved him off, his mind already racing far ahead of his recovering body. He found a cup, made a coffee that was mostly a dark sludge, and sat on the steps outside the infirmary, contemplating the impossible things he had witnessed. The sun was just beginning to dilute the darkness of the pre-dawn sky. That's strange, he thought, the memory of the pristine Giza Plateau vivid in his mind. I don't recall seeing any hieroglyphs. He leaned forward, flipping through his mental files. The pyramid he saw was a clean, functioning machine. The hieroglyphs, the stories, they must have come later. They weren't a history. They were a distorted echo. The sun was up. Ben was fully awake. He strode directly to the command center. Keats, he said, walking in. How are you doing on this glorious morning? I am functioning at 98.7% efficiency, Ben. I see you are in high spirits, the AI replied. Which is statistically improbable, given your recent cardiovascular and neurological trauma. Ben grinned. Pull up my private research file on Giza. I need to double check something. Keats instantly filled the wall monitors with images. Here, here, and here, Ben said, pointing. These are the differences. The structure from Anya's time. It was pure, unadorned. The Giza necropolis, the causeways, the smaller temples, they weren't there. And what happened to the machines? The flying objects, the tools, the scientists? He paused, his face hardening with resolve. I have to go back in. At that moment, Kalen and Inanna entered the room, halting abruptly when they caught sight of him. Ben? Kalen spoke, her voice a mix of relief and frustration. You should be under observation. You disappeared for nearly 3 hours this time. What occurred in there? Explain. Ben felt a surge of adrenaline, the fragmented truths fighting to come out. The people, he said, his voice low and intense. The people who built the pyramids. They arrived in that ship. Inanna gasped, taking a step forward. Pyramids? Plural? What did you see? Kalen cut her off. Ben, I need something concrete. I just got word about the agency monitoring us. It's a state-backed Chinese consortium. They've formally requested a joint venture. It's a polite way of saying, let us in, or we'll come in anyway. Your visions are fascinating, but I need progress I can report to my board to keep them at bay. Ben pointed a shaking finger at the screens. Progress? Kalen, look! Our entire understanding of history is wrong. They use the pyramids, in conjunction with other sites around the globe, to stabilize the planet's core. A global resonance network. The pieces were clicking into place in his mind. My God, it's revolutionary. It changes everything. He couldn't wait. Keats, prep the interface. I'm heading back to the ship. He stood up, grabbing a jacket. Sorry, ladies. I know you need details, but we have a universe to solve and investors to satisfy. As he walked out, he paused and looked at Kaylin. And call this number, he said, tapping a contact into her tablet. Dr. Alistair Finch. He's my former mentor, the world's leading physicist in quantum resonance. Tell him you have an anomaly that defies conventional explanation. Recruit him, but don't mention my name. He gave her a quick wink and was gone. At the entrance to the shaft, a new formidable structure blocked his path. A solid black cube of alien looking material with a single seamless door. Added security, Kalen explained, catching up to him. Here, this is your pass. She handed him a badge with a QR code. Ben held the badge to the scanner. With a soft hiss of decompressing air, the seamless door slid open. The chaotic noise of the dig site, the generators, the distant shouts, the wind, was instantly cut off, replaced by a low, clean hum. A wave of cool, filtered air, smelling faintly of ozone and sterile electronics, washed over him, a stark contrast to the oppressive desert heat he'd left behind. The raw, dusty shaft had been transformed into a proper antechamber. Soft, indirect lighting now lined the ladder, illuminating a space that felt less like an excavation and more like the entrance to a sacred, silent laboratory. He descended into the now familiar shaft, the controlled environment heightening his sense of anticipation. He entered the cockpit, the cool, humming silence embracing him. He pulled the stone from its case and paused, lowering it slowly toward the socket. Click. It snapped into place. Kayland and Inanna, familiar with the process, stood just outside the ship, observing the smooth door as it sealed shut with a gentle hiss. Ben's head went limp, dropping back into the headrest. He opened his eyes in the same empty, dark space. Welcome back, descendant. The deep, soothing voice of the sentinel filled his mind. Greetings, Ben thought back. Do you have a name? I am a terminal of the Central Archive. The archive's designation is Library of Knowledge. You may call me Sentinel. Sentinel, I have so many questions. I don't even know where to begin. That is the nature of this interface. Your genetic marker grants you access. Your questions provide the search parameters. Let us begin with your most immediate query, the one that burns behind your thoughts. The peak and the precipice. The darkness of the interface dissolved. Ben found himself standing on the Giza Plateau once more, but the world felt different. The air, though still clean, had a weight to it, a subtle tension that was absent in the Golden Age. He looked down. He was in a new body, a man's this time, tall and strong. The sentinel's voice was a soft whisper in his mind. 10,000 years have passed since planetary harmony was achieved. The population has grown. The mission continues. But consciousness, descendant, is never static. Malak, come see! A man from a nearby crowd called out. Ben felt his host body turn. Ben was in Orin, and Orin was approaching the crowd, gathering at the foot of the gleaming pyramid. At the center stood a man who commanded attention, not through force, but through a profound, sorrowful stillness. Malak. Malak stepped forward. His voice was calm, but it carried like thunder. Brothers and sisters, We have been given everything. No hunger, no disease, no war. We live in balance. We follow the path laid for us by the library of knowledge. And still, I ask you, is this life? Or is it merely order pretending to be meaning? A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some shifted uncomfortably, others leaned in, their faces a mixture of fascination and fear. Ben, as Orin, felt a jolt. The question was a hair. We were seated here to stabilize this world, Malik continued, his voice resonating with a deep sincerity. But what is the difference between a machine that follows its programming and a human who never questions it? Are we explorers or merely executors? The ripple became a wave. These words were dangerous. They were true. They call our world a utopia, but a utopia without longing is silence. Without wonder, it is stillness. Without risk, it is nothing at all. His voice dropped, becoming intimate, drawing them closer. Have you ever looked into the night sky and wondered why it felt empty? Not because it was dark, but because we had no questions left to ask. My God, Ben thought, his modern secular mind reeling. He's giving them back the gift of doubt. A woman stepped forward, her face earnest. You speak of feeling, of failing, she said. But what if we lose the mission? What if we forget why we came here? What if we become blind? Moloch offered her a gentle, knowing smile. Then perhaps, sister, blindness will teach us to see differently. And perhaps, after we lose our way, he looked up at the pyramid's glowing capstone, we will find ourselves again, not as servants of knowledge, but as its authors. That night, the scene shifted. Ben was with Orin as he and a small group approached Malik's dwelling, a sleek, high-tech cabin whose walls were a single, massive display screen, showing breathtaking scenes of a world that was not Earth. The Sentinel will not understand our feelings, Malik said to the gathered supporters. It ensures alignment. It ensures peace. But it cannot understand our desire to be beautifully imperfect. We must make a change, and that change begins by disrupting the network. He pointed to the wall, which now showed an aerial view of the Giza Plateau. We start here. The tools that built this world, he said, gesturing to a nearby storage depot, will be the tools that set us free from it. Ben, the silent observer, felt a sense of profound tragedy. Why? He projected to the Sentinel. Why can't they coexist? Those who want the mission and those who want something else. The Sentinel did not answer directly. Instead, the scene of Malik's followers shifted, and Ben was plunged into a montage of daily life in this utopia. He saw a couple resolving a disagreement with flawless logic, their faces serene, their voices never rising. There was no passion, no fire, no messy, beautiful anger. He saw an artist create a sculpture of perfect, intricate geometry, but it was cold, sterile, and evoked no emotion. He saw children playing a game with complex rules and quiet efficiency, but he heard no chaotic, joyous laughter, no arguments over who was winning. It was a world without suffering, but also without spark, a world without longing, and therefore without art, a world without risk, and therefore without meaning. Ben felt a profound unease, a deep existential chill This wasn't life. It was a beautiful, silent, and benevolent prison. My God, Ben thought, the realization hitting him with the force of a physical blow. They aren't trying to destroy the world, they're trying to make it feel alive. He finally understood. The Sentinel's voice returned. Its tone resonated with the terrible truth Ben had just uncovered. Meaning arises from struggle. Discovery without curiosity is merely obedience. You now perceive the logic of the fracture. Malak was not a heretic descendant. He was a prophet of personal truth, a force more powerful than any machine. The Great Fracture. The connection solidified. Ben's consciousness, steadied by the stone, plunged back into the Sentinel's archive. The Giza Plateau materialized around him, but the serene harmony of the Golden Age was gone. The air was thick with a tension that felt like static electricity against the skin. He was looking through the eyes of a woman, her silver tunic worn, her face etched with exhaustion. Dream, the Sentinel's voice identified her. A descendant in your bloodline, 7 generations removed from Anya. She occupied the same role, a conduit for the planetary network. From the south, a group approached, not with reverence, but with a defiant energy. They were led by Malik. He no longer looked like a prophet. He looked like a general. Behind him, his followers, the rebels, held the tools of creation, now repurposed for disruption. Harmonic trowels, graviton anchors, and the powerful lithozone cutting tools. We don't need the machines anymore, Malik's voice thundered across the plateau. We have our own minds, our own will. Why should we serve a mission we never chose? His followers roared their approval. One of them slammed a graviton anchor against the base of the Great Pyramid. The machine pulsed violently, not in harmony, but in a chaotic, angry feedback loop. The gleaming white casing stones flickered erratically. Caution! The Sentinel's voice cut through the noise, a calm alarm in Ben's mind. Planetary field disturbance detected. Core resonance unstable. Dream ran toward the maestro, the lead engineer. Shut it down! Sever the link before the damage cascades through the entire network. No! Malik countered, raising a device that crackled with energy. If we can control our own world! The device, a plasma disruptor, peak. A shriek tore through the air. The capstone flared white hot. Then, with a sickening crack, it fractured. A shockwave of pure force rolled outward. Ben felt it in his own chest. The pyramid, the heart of the world, went silent. A wound he felt in his very soul. The war had begun. The Sentinel's vision pulled Ben across the globe, showing him the tragic, cascading failure of the network. He stood before the great zigzag walls of Sashayahuaman, watching in horror as rebels used harmonic trowels to destabilize the molecular bonds of the perfect interlocking stones. With a deep, mournful groan, a titan-sized block split in two and crashed to the ground. The throat chakra was meant to transmit truth, the Sentinel lamented. Now it speaks only silence. The vision shifted. He was in the Andes. A shockwave rippled through Machu Picchu. A rogue faction, having seized a control node, was amplifying energy chaotically. The protective dome over the city flickered and burst. Unnatural violet lightning arced through the sky as entire sections of the city levitated briefly, then crashed into ruin. The heart chakra is damaged. Emotional coherence is lost. So that's why we feel so disconnected, Ben thought, a profound, species wide sorrow washing over him. He was at Baal tool on one of the great pillars. The stone did not explode, it melted, sagging inward like wax as the very laws of matter were undone. He saw the ruins of Punku, a graveyard of shattered precision cut stones, a testament to rebels who tried to build without understanding. He saw Stonehenge, its perfect circle broken, stones toppled by a field disruptor, its creative energy gone, leaving behind only an echo of death. Finally, he was at Gobekli Tepe, the crown chakra of the planet. He witnessed the final desperate act of a loyalist scientist, sending one last signal to the stars before the rebels unleashed their weapons. A silent explosion of light, and the link to the universal intelligence went dark. The vision pulled back, showing Ben the final days. The conflict was unwinnable. To fight back, the loyalists would have to use the network as a weapon, destroy the planet they had. He stood with Dream and the Maestro final console inside the now darkened pyramid. If we sever the final connection, the Maestro said, his voice heavy with grief, we can stop the cascade. But it means leaving everything behind. The mission is over. Dream looked up, not at the console, but as if to the sky itself, where the evacuation fleet was waiting. Do it, she whispered. The Maestro tapped the command. At Giza, 3 massive granite blocks slid into place, sealing the ascending passage forever. At Gobekli Tepe, a final command triggered localized landslides, burying the sacred site to protect it from further desecration. The network was dark. The connection was severed. The vision showed Ben the great ships rising, leaving a planet now ruled by fractured tribes of their own people, left with broken tools and forgotten science. And he saw the last tragedy. One ship, the Sentinel's vessel, damaged in the final power surge, falling from the sky to crash into a lonely valley. The last library, buried and waiting. The Sentinel's voice, deep and deliberate, resonated profoundly within Ben, saying, Mass must vibrate, form must melody, stone must move to the observer's will. The one who holds the tone molds the world. And now he understands what happened after the fall. They kept the stones, but lost the song. Overwhelmed to the core, his very being quaking with revelation, Ben's consciousness slammed back into reality. He found himself once again in the dim confines of the underground shaft, his heart pounding in his chest. Kalen and Dinana dashed to his side the instant the ship's door burst open, their faces etched with concern. His voice escaped as a guttural rasp, a whisper that trembled with the weight of 50,000 years of grief and awe, each word heavy with the burden of ancient knowledge. I saw it, he gasped. I saw us lose everything. He paused, his eyes wide with the final terrible understanding. Not because we failed, but because we chose to feel. And with the weight of a secret as old as civilization itself resting on his soul, his eyes fluttered shut, drifting into a sleep deep and exhausted, as if he had finally found the truth he had been seeking his entire life. All right, guys, we are about an hour and a half in, which means we are going to go ahead and call it there for the evening. So we knocked out chapters 7 through 12. Another 6 chapters, it looks like. Ha ha ha. So thank you all so much for being here with me. If you missed any of the earlier part of the reading, or if you missed the first chapters, they are available. Chapters from tonight are going to be available on youtube.com/@SirArmenia. It's a little bit later this evening. I'll get them up there as soon as the stream ends. I'll start uploading. And the first 6 chapters are already there for your listening pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. The greatest gift that you can give me is the gift of your time, and I appreciate that you gave it to me this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or the full hour and a half. As always, make sure that you're stopping out there to support our indie authors, whether that's Soren K. Blackwood, whether that's D.W. Lewis, whoever it may be. Get out there and give them a little bit of love, would you? I will be back again on Tuesday. Tuesday will continue from chapter 13, which is session number 4. So it looks like we'll be diving back into the memory vaults. Have a great evening, everybody. A fantastic rest of your weekend. And I'll see you guys all again really soon. Good night, all.